I just asked myself, man, whose life am I living? This is my life. I have to do this. I have to go to this job. My time has to belong to other people.
This is a conversation I had with Atman, who was a former New York professional working in marketing and finance who made the transition to become a full-time writer while traveling the world.
If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. I wanted to get to as close of that as I could in my life.
He shares his story of quitting his job and how he overcame all the challenges that he faced trying to become a full-time writer.
Uncertainty is a very vague monster in our heads. Because it's uncertain, it doesn't have a face. What it has is a bunch of terrifying potential outcomes. Death, failure, shame, embarrassment, loss of loved ones.
He shares in detail his story and how the hardships make him enjoy life more.
And realizing, there's a lot of shitty things in the world, for sure. But underneath that, there's an entire world of beauty. And we can choose to look at that. And I think from that point on, I can't be a pessimist.
We also talk about his relationship with failure.
When people say failure is not an option, failure is an option. In fact, failure is a requirement. If I'm gonna fail, let me fail grandly. That was the first time in that period when I started being nice to myself.
Also, how he dealt with the feedback that he got from his conservative family after quitting his stable, high-income job.
There was a lot of people, family and friends being like, oh, you really fucked up. You shouldn't have done that. At first, I took it really personally because I automatically assumed they knew what they were talking about. I didn't give myself enough credit. And that allowed me to realize, oh, this stuff that everyone's saying to me, it isn't about me. These are projections. These are projections coming from people who have my best intentions in mind, but they don't have the wisdom or the experience to give me the best advice available.
I think of Atman's story as an heroic journey, trying to overcome all of these challenges and going through this adventure to create the type of work and lifestyle that he wants. I found his story very inspiring and I hope you enjoy it too. Hey Atman, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Alexander.
So the first question I have to ask you is, where are you, Atman?
So I'm in lovely Hoi An, which is a small, quiet, charming city in the middle of Vietnam. If you look behind me, you can see the rice fields. Right, so really picturesque, very slow pace of life. Really nice for just slowing things down. So I'm here for the time being, and who knows, maybe this is a longer stay for me.
That looks just amazing. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Aatman. The way I tell everyone to pronounce it is like Batman with no B. So just Aatman. I used to be I was a former professional in New York City. I was in marketing and finance, and I had a career for 4 to 5 years. And from day one, it was never for me. And so I finally got the nerve to quit. And then from that point on, I've been working as a fiction writer. And so up to this point, I'm now maybe 2 books in and currently wrapping up the latest one, almost finished, and getting really excited to present it towards the publishers and to see what can happen with it moving forward.
That's great. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, because of your very interesting story and the lifestyle that you now have created. So can you tell us a little bit about your transition? Like what made you go into the job that you had in New York and what made you eventually leave this job and create the lifestyle that you have right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So to make it very straightforward, when I was younger, I grew up in a Indian family, first generation Indian. So I was born in the US, born in New York City, but the people around me were all from this different culture, a different generation. So there's an immigrant expectation to get work that's very stable, it's very secure, makes a lot of money. And over time, as with many immigrant families, the stability is not the only important thing. Now it's about status. So that translates into positions such as being a doctor, high finance, an engineer, a lawyer, those kind of things. Very prestigious. I could tell that's where the direction was being laid for me when I was a little kid. I remember immediately telling my parents, I don't want to do this, I don't do that, I don't do that. And I wanted to always pursue more creative things such as music. I wanted to teach on some level. I love language. But I was doing hip hop from high school onto college, into my career. I wanted to be a rapper, straight up. Maybe 85% of my personality, my time, the days that I was spending was surrounded by making music, whether it was writing lyrics, practicing the lyrics, performing at shows, listening to beats, listening to other artists, right? Just daydreaming about my life as a musician in the future. So I just kind of went into the direction that everybody or, our particular immigrant society wanted me to go in, which was, okay, business, simple. I chose marketing because it had something of a creative aspect to it. Whereas my peer group, my friends, they all went into finance and professional fields like that. So I kind of just went with the herd because at that time there's no hip hop university to go to. So I went with the practical choice. Now, during university, I studied, not very hard, to be honest. Again, I was making music when I should have been doing my schoolwork and I should have been practicing for the exam. And that translated into the career. I was in the marketing field on the side of finance. And it's an interesting enough field if that's something you want to do. But for me, it was never artistic enough, creative enough. I didn't like having to wake up at a certain time and dressing a certain way to show up for a boss. So after 4 years of living this way, I was just getting more and more frustrated that my time and my energy wasn't mine. It belonged to someone else, a company that was giving me money so that I could basically be on call for them whenever they needed me. And that was really making me bitter and miserable. When I first started the job, it was 1 year that I gave myself. I told myself, I'll stick around until the end of the year. I'll have money. And then I'll put that into the music thing I've always wanted to do. And as the years progressed, the lifestyle increases. I had a nice apartment. Me and my friends would go out on the weekends, spend money like idiots, not having any respect for the money we had. So it could be fun. There are trips that we took, went to nice fancy restaurants. So there's a comfort there that keeps you attached. The expression, I believe, is golden handcuffs. And it only gets worse the more money you make. I have friends in the finance world where they have so many nice things, so much access to pricier parts of life, but at the same time, to justify those expenses, they have to work so they can earn the money, but then they work those jobs so that they can achieve those nice luxury comfort goods. So it can be a vicious cycle, and I was trapped in it for a little bit. I try to juggle the music thing, my actual creative aspirations, my passion with the job, but that's very difficult because even if you live in the city where you work and you perform, I was in New York City. I was fortunate to be in this city where there's so many of these kind of opportunities available. But if your boss tells you that it's 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, that's more common in the, I guess, like business world. Okay, today you have to stay later. We have a project. It's Friday night. You have a show tonight, right? You've got this thing that you want to do a showcase at 8 o'clock, but we need you to stay until 9. It's very difficult to balance full-time professional work and creative work because when push comes to shove, you won't get fired for not working on music that one night. You can put it off, right? But if you put off the job, you can get in financial trouble. There can be actual consequences. So naturally, you're going to let your creative pursuits slide first. But then if that keeps happening, then you never get around to doing the creative work. The job will always take precedence over it. And so a lot of bitterness comes from that. And even if you try to push so that you can maximize your time and effort like I tried, I would do work and I would sneak in music during work itself, right? When there were downtime and nobody was checking on me, I'd have my headphones on and I'd be writing. But you can try to juggle all those things and optimize yourself, but it can be quite draining and it leaves very little room for anything else, such as healthy foods to eat, cooking for yourself, socializing, going to the gym, working out, or even just spending leisure time doing nothing on the weekends. You're very much so in a grind mind state, which I do believe in, but if there's no room for any joy to seep in, if there's just the pressure of having to constantly make it, I've got to maximize my time. Not only do you get burnout? You'll get sick. Like I've had those situations where I was trying to be super optimized and do all the things I wanted to do on top of the things that I was required to do, i.e. my job. And my body just couldn't take it. I would be exhausted. I didn't have the energy tank to allow me to do these things. So the burnout becomes real. And because you have an apartment to pay for and all these bills, the thing that you return to is the job. And you feel attached to it. You feel tied to it. And at some point, I just asked myself, man, whose life am I living? This is my life. I have to do this. I have to go to this job. My time has to belong to other people. I have to take care of this account that I don't give a crap about, that I want no ownership over, but I have to smile and be dishonest in the corporate world, the world of corporate politics, and pretend like thank you for giving me this thing I didn't want to do. So there's just a lot of BS involved in that. And I finally got the balls to quit. And my quitting didn't come from a place of planning, like I had a plan B after I quit, I'm going to do this. No, 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 no. The way I quit was, the analogy I use is, it's like being in a burning building. You don't jump from the burning building because you think you're going to suddenly fly or you're going to be okay once you hit the ground. You just jump from the burning building because you can't stand the heat anymore. So not even the discomfort, the misery, the frustration and anger of feeling like a slave to this kind of hamster wheel, right? This thing that society tells us to live, like this model of living that we're told we're supposed to aspire to. It just got too much for me, and I finally just said I can't do it. I had a dream about it where I quit. I told my roommate, he said, don't. I told him, if my boss calls me in tomorrow, I'm going to have to tell them. And he's like, don't do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it, right? I don't think I can not do it. And lo and behold, the next day my boss did call me in and said, hey, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself. You're not, the work is in decline. It's not as strong as it used to be. And I told him, I could lie to you. I could make up a story about how I have a family member who's sick and it's been really hard. But the truth is I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not in me. And they were good to me. They worked with me. They said, maybe we can put you in a more creative department. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not trying to make a small adjustment here so that I can kind of have a little bit more of a comfortable job. No, I need a clean break. I cannot do this anymore. And I told him, whatever is in you that allows you to do this job, because the job in itself is not a bad thing. There's no lack of nobility for providing for your family. So whatever your priorities are, maybe you like the job. Maybe you like this kind of work. Okay. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you have a family to take care of and you like the job enough to justify the money it allows you to spend on your family. Maybe what you do for work has never been important. Really, you just want to climb mountains in your free time, and this allows you to do that, right? So whatever anyone's personal hierarchy of needs are as pertaining to their work, mine, I always knew, is very high. I wanted to live that thing of, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. I wanted to get to as close of that as I could in my life. So hence, I couldn't stay in a job where I had no passion or interest in, where I didn't really see myself developing into more of the person that I wanted to be. So the decision was hard to ultimately execute. In fact, I would fantasize about being called into the boss's office and getting fired and having a whole spiel ready where, while they're saying, we're sorry, but we have to let you go, I'm like, no, don't be sorry. You did me the biggest favor. Thank you so much. I couldn't justify pulling the trigger, but the discomfort of being in this life got to the point where I finally basically said no to it all and burned that old identity to the ground. And it was the best thing I did. I didn't, pull the trigger and get myself fired and quit and all this because I thought it was the wise thing to do or the smart thing to do. All those things came afterwards. I simply did it because my spirit wouldn't allow me to continue living this way. So I didn't know if I would be able to pick up the pieces or who I'd be afterwards. I just knew that it couldn't be this anymore.
Yeah, I think the learning, or at least what I find very interesting, is not like, hey, don't go into marketing, hey, don't work in New York City. Like that's not the
Mm-hmm.
learning here. The learning is about yourself and how you felt doing that job, and that it isn't resonated with certain types of personality, and also resonated with the lifestyle that you wanted to create. And so I wonder how it was for you, because you can see things from, oh, he was very passionate about music and creative things. But another way of seeing it, I wonder if that's how you see it, is like, you have certain talents, you have certain strengths, you're naturally pretty good at certain things and doing creative things, and that's part of the reason that you enjoy that so much. And so these things where you, I wonder if that's how you see it, but these things where you felt like you were really good at, these were not being shown in your work, and therefore you didn't really connect with what you were doing at your work. Is that how you see it, or do you see it differently?
No, I think there is truth to that because, like I said earlier, marketing compared to finance, right, can be considered, and I use the air quotations to say creative because there's a degree of that, but it's a very like drawing, coloring within the lines kind of creativity. It's creativity like how can I make this presentation more creative? It's creativity like how can how can I design my report to be more creative? To me, it's kind of just like a bit as opposed to tapping into the vast pool of creativity that an artist can. So it's a clear difference between creativity in that sense and artistry. And I always wanted to spend more time on the artistry side. Now, to your point, if I'd been in media offices before, I'd done some work there as well, and I'd done a little bit of sales. I like the show Mad Men. You know, it might be a romanticized version of what the ad agency life was back in the day. But I can imagine if I was in a boardroom pitching ideas for a product, coming up with taglines, right? Coming up with interesting advertisements or cartoons and all these different things that I can attach with the product. That to me would speak a lot more to my creativity, my love of language, playing with words, right? Thinking of clever little things to say. How can I engage the consumer's emotion with the product? That would be a lot more interesting. And at that point, I think I would enjoy the work a lot more where I could justify spending more time in it because I could see myself having fun. It's allowing me to utilize my strengths, my passions, as you said, in a way where not only do I get gratification from a job well done based on my talents, right? But it's something that I'd want to grow in, and I'd also get some kind of recognition and glory from those kind of things. I think the difference was at that time, and maybe to a degree now, I still had a little bit of that, idealist chip on the shoulder, kind of like, this is soul sucking work. I don't want to be a corporate robot, right? That kind of thing. And I don't have that now, and I haven't for a while because I recognize I don't know what my future is. If for whatever reason, my priorities change and I need to return to the corporate world to live a more traditional professional life, it's not a death sentence. I have the maturity now to know that. It's just that when I was younger, it was so constricting and so claustrophobic, and it felt completely unfree. And it really felt like I'd made a deal to receive X amount of money to give up everything else that was important to me. And I think that can be the case still to this day. But that isn't to say that in the future, if I take my, people skills and my language skills, and there's a position at a university or a company for communications, right? And meaningfully, something that aligns with my values, something where I can really let loose and don't have the position isn't so prescribed where I have to behave one kind of way, do this kind of way. If there's a degree of freedom to it, then I can see myself being like, yeah, screw it. Give me that paycheck. I'll do that for a little bit, right? There's nothing shameful about that. I don't feel like I'm selling myself short or being untrue to myself. So the perspective has changed, but I think, yes, to your point, if it doesn't speak to the things that you naturally have a passion for, which typically ends up being the things that we like doing, we like to do the things that we're good at, right? Then it would be a much easier sell to remain there, to continue working that way. But I don't think that's the case for a lot of people. I think a lot of people have to make concessions and be like, yeah, well, I like making charts because I like organization. Well, do you like the organization of having to put together facts and numbers and data for somebody else? Or would you like the organization of running your own thing where you still utilize your organizational skills, but in a capacity that speaks more directly to you? You know? So I think that's the difference.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like that's how it was for me, at least. That um, I I enjoyed my job, but I was uneasy, and I didn't really know why. And certain things were somehow conflicting, and I didn't see myself in that path projected into the future. And so I switched. I now I am in this very creative type of job where, and I think now I understand a little bit more. Like, hey, there were so many aspects of my personality, of my creativeness, of how I like to think, of what I want to do. Those things were not used at all and would not be developed at all in that job. And further, the lifestyle also didn't resonate with me. It's not something that I would see myself into the future. I, I don't know if that's for everybody, but at least for me, that was one of the things that was very important to me, to do something of my own, like something that belongs to me. And then I can put my heart and soul to that. And I think so that the interesting thing is this self-discovery of what are the things that are important to you, what are the things that you're good at, and then figuring out how to make a living with that. And so I would like to now listen to the second part of your story. So once you realized and you jumped off this building on fire, what did you do then?
Well, that's the beauty. I didn't do anything. Rather, I didn't die. That was the cool thing. You know, my world didn't go into complete chaos and disarray, and suddenly, I couldn't survive in this strange new world. No, the beauty was I jumped. It was scary, but it forced me to make some decisions. It forced me to take some inventory of my life and say, well, what is it I want? You know, what can I do? Because now, a big chunk of my identity, the majority, like I said, 85% of it was attached to making music. I quit my job and I said to myself, now that you have 100% free time, all to you, your time is yours, are you going to pursue music 100% like you said you would? And very easy to answer. The answer was no. And the answer is no, because I knew that was just going to set me up for another kind of trap, another kind of prison. Because at that point, I was living through my music as an escape from the drudgery of my day-to-day life. So I was putting so much pressure on myself to have it look a certain kind of way. It was a safe haven. It was like a dream house. And in your dream house, you know every little detail about your dream house, right? How the rooms look, this amazing bathroom, the kitchen. But if your dream house isn't perfect in reality, even if one tile is a little bit out of place, not a dream house anymore, not a fantasy anymore. Now the reality is less than what you always needed it to be. So I realized I love it, but I'm not in love with hip hop anymore. I'm putting way too much pressure on myself to, like, quote unquote make it the way I want to. If I had to get my hands dirty and just thug it out and grind through like the music underground and take a bunch of losses and have it not be what I wanted, would I still want it? No. I wanted the fantasy of it. I wanted the perfection, the safety of the construction that I'd made in my mind. So it's good that I caught that. Because what that allowed me to do was divorce myself from music. And it was painful. It was sad. This is something that I'd done for like 11, 12 years religiously. It's the biggest part of me, so I let that go. So now I have this gaping hole of who am I? Where am I going to get my money from? What is my next week going to look like? What is my life in general going to look like? So I discarded my identity, not because I thought that's the wisdom, but again, because it was a necessity. But from there emerged a lot of space and opportunity. So I quit. I decided I'm not going to make music again. or I'm not going to pursue it. I'm going to let myself be unburdened by the pressure of making music and being something. But I asked myself, well, what do you like? And I still love language. That's why I did the music thing in the first place. That's why I love lyrics so much. I loved wordplay. I love storytelling. So I thought, why not try my hand as a fiction author? And I didn't put the pressure of having to be that, but just to try that, to see what it would feel like if I enjoyed it, if it was something I could see myself continuing in the future. So I applied to grad school for a writing degree, which you don't need. You know, you can just read books and write, and you'll probably be better than the kid who's in the classroom paying a bunch of student loans just to be in there. But I wanted to be around the peer group because I'd never had those kind of people around me, never had fellow writers. Friend groups were always like professionals, business people, not so artistic. And I wanted the tutelage of people who'd done it before, right? My professors, other writers where I could learn, where I could have mentors. So I wanted to put myself in a position to really give it a good go. So I wrote a sample because up to this point I hadn't written anything, not anything I could submit to a university in an application. I had lyrics. I had books and books and books of lyrics, but that's not the material that, they would probably accept. So I spent that summer living very cheaply because I still had my apartment in the city. I wasn't going out. I was doing standardized tests so I could at least show that I have a high verbal aptitude. I studied hard. I got a good score. And then I would just spend days at the local cafes in the city just writing this kind of shitty little manuscript. But it was good enough to get me into some universities, which was great. I get into the university, and before I go, I did a stint in the Philippines where I did some volunteer work, helping rebuild homes after a typhoon. So a lot of just hard construction, living very simply, living in a dorm, waking up early, doing like 6 days a week of like 8 hours of physical labor, and then Sundays is off. But it was wonderful. It was amazing. It's the simplest I'd ever lived, and it's the most positive I've ever felt up to that point. And the really cool thing, and the reason why I say this is because the positivity, the optimism, it wasn't a mental justification. It wasn't like I was rationalizing, do I feel positive? Yeah, I guess I'm positive. No, this was an undeniable physical experience of waking up every morning at 5 a.m, right? And excited to go dig holes in really hard soil, for 5 hours in the hot Philippine sun. So that was cool because that experience allowed me to see that you don't need very much to be happy, and you need even less to be okay. Because I was looking at some of these people who'd lost their homes, whose homes were building, and they're happy people. And you could say, of course, they could improve their cost of living and have some of the bare necessities, those needs met, for sure. But it helped me simplify my life in terms of what I needed to feel good and to feel safe. And I remember there was a time where we were hauling cement, like buckets of cement in a line so that we can pour it into a base. But we needed like a bunch of volunteers in a row. And while we're waiting for the cement to be carried to the next person, you have like 5 seconds of free time to do whatever. And so a buddy of mine, a Filipino guy, he had his little speaker system out and he put on some music. So I just remember just naturally, before the bucket would come to me, I would just be dancing and vibing, right? Just like he would. I would start freestyling, hip hop randomly. And it was really nice because this thing that I loved, this music thing, this lyric stuff, it came back to me. Not the part where I needed to monetize or commodify it, turn it into something, but just the natural expression of language. So that was really nice because the innocent, real part of it never left. So even though I thought I divorced it, the authentic part of it stayed with me. So that was really nice to learn. So I went into my grad school experience having my perspective opened up a little bit, being an optimist for the first time and realizing, there's a lot of shitty things in the world for sure. But underneath that, there's an entire world of beauty. And we can choose to look at that. And I think from that point on, I can't be a pessimist or a cynic, because it's kind of like I know better. Now I know better. I've seen the abundance and, the stuff of life that we can be grateful for, the simple things. So it's very difficult to then return to being like, oh, the world's just fucked. I think it's I mean, maybe people haven't arrived at that point where their cynicism might be genuine, but I think it's a bit of a cop out. I think it's a very convenient way to see the world because it requires nothing of you,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So I took that with me into the grad school program, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of neurotic, anxious, pilled up writers, and no judgment if you need what you need, but generally the mood was that of gloom, a little depressive. And meanwhile, you have a person like me there, but like, guys, let's go party. Let's have fun. I was excited to be around other writers so we could challenge each other and we could grow. But unfortunately, that wasn't the experience I had in grad school. But I still said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to get my money's worth. Give me all the assignments you can, professors. Why is this working? Why isn't this working? So I was hungry. So I took unlike my undergrad, my business degree, where I cheated my ass off and did nothing, right? I took my grad school super seriously because now it was speaking to the things that I actually cared about. Now it's time to put my money where my mouth is, and really bet on myself. So that's what made me take it seriously. And I will say that whole experience, right, the letting the job go and then allowing these other pieces to start coming into my life was what made me an adult, because it forced me to pay attention to the things I was doing and why I was doing them, and to see if this was ultimately going to nourish me or if it's wasting my time or holding me back. So all that extra space I got from letting that old identity go made way for a lot of new things that I never thought I could be, things that I never thought I would like. So it allowed me to be very experimental, open to opportunities, just curious about trying new things. And some things stuck with me, some things didn't, but it enabled me to have many more experiences in life and to get a better sense of who I actually am, not who I think I am. We have this identity thing where like, I know I'm this person, I like this, and I don't like this. I was able to step away from that and challenge myself and try new things. Like I was able to run like a little mini marathon. I had never done that. I hated running, but I did it, and to this day now it's like I surf. I never thought I could surf. I never thought I'd be in the shape I'm in. I never thought I'd have a six-pack. I never thought that I'd have 2 books written. So there's a bunch of things that I got to try because I had an openness now where I didn't have to define myself so strictly. And that allowed me to try a lot of different things to really get a sense of what is the direction that I want to go in.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like when you come out of school, like you kind of think what a lot about yourself, and so you think you want to go this direction, but you don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever plans you make at that age, like it's so difficult that they actually turn any way like you expected, because it's the amount of things that you learn in those first years after going out of your parents' house and living for yourself, making your own choices, trying different things, and you learn so much, and then so many things change. And so you were so sure that you wanted to do music, and then suddenly when you really had the opportunity, okay, it's not a dream, I can make it a reality. Do I really want to? Oh, well, actually, you realize so many things. So it teaches you also how to deal with uncertainty and be able to accept it to a certain degree, like I think you did, and then make your own choices. And suddenly when you're in your own choices in university, studying the things because you want to do certain things with them, the motivation changes and you take it way more seriously than the other people that just did it because they're not sure if they were going to succeed, if they're going to do something with that. You realize yeah, maybe it's not important to have this certainty. Let me give my all and try to learn as much as I can and see where it goes.
Yeah, and that's a key word. The uncertainty. In the beginning, once you take like a leap of faith, right, or you try something new, your first real risk that you take, that's super uncertain. And uncertainty is a very vague monster in our heads. Because it's uncertain, it doesn't have a face. What it has is a bunch of terrifying potential outcomes: death, failure, shame, embarrassment, loss of loved ones, whatever, right? The worst thing that your mind can conjure up, uncertainty means lack of safety ultimately, in the beginning stages, I think. But then, and I think many people who've traveled their first time traveling solo, they can attest to this. You go in a little bit terrified because you don't know what the environment, you don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know how you're going to survive. And then you're forced to actually have to act. You're forced in a situation of uncertainty, but now you have to make things happen. And then you do, and things fall into place, and you're still alive. And then you realize, I didn't give myself enough credit. I'm so much more capable than I thought I was. And that becomes the seed of a lot of confidence in terms of your ability to survive in the world. So once you get your taste of uncertainty and you make your little victories, right? Then, at least for me, uncertainty is a good thing now. Because all that means is it's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to learn. Something's uncertain here. Great. Let's see what I'm made of. Let's see the way how did I put this? I heard this in some movie, I think, one time, but I liked it. And I adapted it to uncertainty, where it's like, we might be scared of going into a jungle. But now, after spending this much time in uncertainty, if you throw me into the jungle, not only would I come out alive, I'd come out 10 pounds heavier, which is kind of a cool thing to say, but also to live. And so you become more and more bold. You have a greater appetite for risk. You take bigger chances. And you're accustomed to the prospect of failure. Uncertainty, ultimately, I think, is a failure of some kind. Whether it's the failure of your life, failure of your success, your relationships. But when you can actually fail because you tried something, then all your dignity is retained. You don't lose any self-respect for yourself. You may have to reconfigure things and try things in a new way, right? Find a different route to the goal you want. But you can still hold your head high because you didn't allow the cowardice or any kind of fear to keep you from attempting what you wanted to do. So I think in the beginning stages, uncertainty can be paralyzing, right? Something that really limits you. But then once you get into it more and more and more, you realize that there's so much internally that you can control that no matter what the external surroundings throw at you, you're going to be okay. To whatever degree, but you're going to be okay. You'll figure it out because you know you can. You're capable of it. So I think that's pretty empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. I also told my girlfriend the other day that like uncertainty also detracts how much enjoyment you have. Like I'm doing this work and I'm still uncertain how it will turn out and to which degree it will be successful or it fail and if I will need to do something else. But I realized that you shouldn't let the constant in life detract from your experience. And I think uncertainty is one of those constants. It's always there. Like I know for myself, I will always be aiming at something ambitious. I will always be aiming at something. And so if I will make it, will always be uncertain to a given degree. And so if knowing that that constant will always be there, it shouldn't be one of the things that limits my enjoyment of life. And so that's very interesting. Really resonates now with what you said.
You have me thinking, like, there was a moment where so I finished my master's degree. I lived in Vietnam, and then I had kind of like a not so happy ending with Vietnam. I actually got kicked out for like stupid visa reasons. And at that point, Vietnam had felt like my home. I loved it. It was exactly my speed. So getting ripped apart from that was heartbreaking. So I didn't want to go back to the US. So I'd heard some nice things about Taiwan. So I moved to Taipei. Literally airdropped myself. Didn't know anyone, didn't know anything. Because I was very much so on my high horse of, that's okay, put me anywhere, I'll figure it out, right? So I get there thinking, all right, well, I have good teaching experience. I have a master's degree, writing the book. I should be able to find part-time work as a teacher, getting paid well, easily. It's got the market for it. I get there, and it's the physically weakest I've ever been. I was always like a strong guy, but I was legitimately devastated after getting kicked out of Vietnam, right? So I wasn't really taking care of myself with my nutrition, with the gym, any of that kind of stuff. But I was still writing, and I was still meditating when I felt like it. I'm in Taiwan, not in the best headspace, but thinking things will just work out because I'm the shit. It's gonna work. The universe will just provide, right? And it hadn't been. I was doing part-time work at like a little cram school where it's just noisy, chaotic. It's not a really good learning environment. And it was kind of in the outskirts of the city, so I'd take like a 35-minute train. And I was maybe like a month and a half, you know, into doing that, and it wasn't going the way I thought. I'd applied to some places and not got the response that I thought I was going to get. I thought, I was a shoo-in for this job, working with these adults. No response. So back to uncertainty, and now fear of what's going to happen to me here. I have way less money than I did before. I'm not in great shape. Mentally, I'm not in great shape. How am I going to survive? And I was so broke that I remember for like a week, I could only eat. Fortunately, the place where I was staying, the hostel, they had like peanut butter. So I could buy some bread and have peanut butter for breakfast. But for the rest of my meals, I had maybe, how much? NTD, New Taiwanese dollars. I had maybe 100 NTD, which is about like $3 US, to spend for my food for the day. So I would end up just going to the 7-Eleven and getting like a little bowl of pasta and maybe like a bag of chips. So I was the closest I've ever been to starving, not compared to anybody who's actually really had to experience that. Because fortunately, I have family and friends. If I said, guys, I'm really doing bad, can you please send money? If, I'm fortunate enough to have that option. But just while I'm still doing my own thing, the times were pretty lean. And so I remember taking a train back from the teaching gig. And I'm like, just things aren't working out there the way I thought they were supposed to. And then I started having a conversation with myself about, wait, who said it was supposed to turn out like anything? I was telling myself, you're holding so tightly to this control of how you think things are supposed to be. And what you're allowing yourself to do is be paralyzed by fear, again, of some kind of vague failure. But you have to give yourself full permission to fail. In fact, failure, when people say failure is not an option, it's the opposite. Failure is an option. In fact, failure is a requirement. But if I'm going to fail, then let me fail, not because I was just slowly whittled away into something small. No. Let me fail because I took big swings. If I'm going to fail, let me fail grandly. So that was the first time in that period when I started being nice to myself, when I stopped putting so much pressure on myself. Even though it felt like, my back's against the wall a little bit, something needs to happen. I told myself, okay, moving forward, right now, you're sad. Give yourself permission to be sad. Allow yourself to wallow, right? Don't be extreme with the self-pity, but if you just want to sleep all day, sleep all day. You lost your home, a place that, emotionally felt like home for you. Right? Think about someone who goes through a real breakup or a loss of a loved one. I mean, I can allow myself to say that this hit me hard and that I'm still recovering from it, figuring it out, processing it. So give myself the respect of allowing myself to be wounded for a little bit. And in that wounded period, I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to eat any kind of way. I don't have to meditate. I don't even have to be social if I don't want to be. These were previously like my 5 pillars of well-being: eating healthy, exercising, creative work, spiritual work, socializing, things that kind of keep you afloat. I told myself, you're not obligated to do any of those things now. The one thing you should do is write. Write, continue working so you can make some money. Those are functional, practical things. But beyond that, you have full permission to do nothing. And if you do the other healthy things, great, extra credit, but not necessary. And the last thing I told myself was to get out of my own way. I'm working really hard trying to control what the course of my life is supposed to be. Let go of control. Let it go. You're not in charge. You experienced this before when you quit your job and things just seem to fall into place, right? I started to develop more of like a spiritual sense, and not in like a very detailed, defined way, but just it was the first time that me, a very analytical, critical, let me dissect this thing kind of thinker, was able to let go and allow there to be the existence of something larger than myself, right? To whatever extent, and to be okay with not knowing what that is, which in the past would have drove me crazy because I needed to put a pin on it. No, I could be free to that. So I told myself, get out of my own way, let go of control, right? Allow yourself to release yourself to whatever that larger thing is and let that wind carry you. And I had to feel it. I had to truly, almost I had to let go of the superstition of, no, if I don't let go of control, if I let go of control, things are gonna be bad. I had to let go. I had to take the risk of letting go of control. So I had to feel it more than just intellectually. And the beauty was I did, and I felt better. Felt really good because now suddenly it wasn't all on me. Next morning, I wake up, read the emails, and it was from a position that I didn't apply for. They found me. And the position was for teaching creative writing, basically fiction writing, to bilingual Taiwanese students. Couldn't have asked for a more perfect part-time job. And I didn't apply to it. That's the beauty. They found me. Turned into a really good working relationship with someone who I still speak to this day, an option to always go back there and continue teaching these kids. And the exact kind of work I would need, exact kind of supplementary work to being an author, because now I'm teaching the kids about the craft of writing while sharpening my own skills so that I get to be the expert in the room, so I need to know my shit. So again, like this thing of uncertainty, and even as confident, as much bravado as I had, thinking I've got it in control, I'm going to be fine, I developed the muscle memory and the mindset to survive in that situation. But it's still, I had to return to, okay, but let the uncertainty be the uncertainty. Let go, right? Trust a little bit, because that's really what opened me up and got me to where I'm in the first place. So I just wanted to add to that about the uncertainty thing, because even when you get humbled, after thinking you know everything or I've got this figured out, there's still always room to be like, hey, can I be more open to the risk that I'm taking? Can I be more open to letting go of the control so that I can actually receive? Because if I'm holding on to this, I'm losing sight of everything else around. But if I let go, now suddenly the whole world opens up and I can be much more receptive.
What a story. Yeah, I think like it has so much of. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we like stories. It's like this character goes into this situation, it hits him bad, he has to figure out things, he needs to grow. You are another character after the story. Like this, you can see it as a failure, but you can also see everything that you took with yourself from that experience.
Yeah.
Like you're another different type of person, different type of beast.
It was painful, but life affirming.
Definitely not something you would recommend to anybody, but you're now the things that you can do now, the risks that you can take, and therefore also the rewards that, like every risk also comes with a certain reward, right? The rewards that you can now go after are much larger because of that. So I would like to hear a little bit from during this transition, when you switched from your job in New York and you quit and you went into this writing experiment or goal. What was the feedback you got from friends and family? Was it supportive or was it discouraging? How did that influence you?
Oh, so to bring it back to the uncertainty thing, in the beginning, when I just made that decision and there was no turning back and now I had to figure things out, it was a lot of naysayers. It was a lot of people, basically, it's family and friends being like, oh, you really fucked up. You're going to struggle now. You shouldn't have done that. How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And at first, I took it really personally because I automatically assumed they knew what they were talking about. I didn't give myself enough credit. I thought it would just put the seed of doubt into my mind, hearing all the negativity and the discouragement around me, especially when I didn't have as many or any people in my corner being like, no, no, good job, right? So there's no balance to the negativity. I did have one cousin who said, hey, just work hard and you'll find your niche. And that was the best advice I'd received because he didn't say you're going to be a superstar or, you're going to be the shit. No, he said basically in so many words, keep your head down, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll be okay. And that's all I really needed to hear. Instead, I was getting a lot of negativity. Then I already made my decision. There's no turning back. So I started making the moves I was making, gaining little victories here and there, having a little bit more ground to stand on for the decision I made. And that allowed me to realize, oh, this stuff that everyone's saying to me, it isn't about me. These are projections. These are projections coming from people who have my best intentions in mind, but they don't have the wisdom or the experience to give me the best advice available. Really, they're coming from a place of fear. So a cousin who's never even considered what an alternative to their very standardized life, right? Go to school, get this nice job, get married, have kids, be on this track. How else could they relate to me, who's gone rogue, right? Who's gone off script? They can only see the uncertainty, that weird, vague fear of something it's not going to be okay, right? They were coming from that place. I remember another cousin was like, well, what about getting married? Like now, how are you going to, and I was just like, you're making the assumption that I want to get married or that I want to get married on a timeline or that that's important to me. So I realized that what I'm doing is very different than the way they've experienced life. And because they haven't walked that path, there's only so much they can grasp it. So you keep a little bit of grace for them because really it's coming from a good place. They care about you and they want what's best for you. But you also have to grow up a little bit and recognize, but just because they want what's best for you doesn't mean they're in the best position to tell you what's best for you. And so over the years, something I learned with these people who would have these conversations with me was in the beginning, I would engage with them. I'd indulge and I'd try to prove why what I'm doing is legitimate. But I was giving logical arguments to an emotional problem. Ultimately, they're like, you're not fine, you're not fine, you're not fine because of things that reassure me to know that you're fine, such as like financial status or, relationship status. All these things are not there. So therefore therefore things are not fine, right? I had 3 of my best friends were at getting drinks in the city one time. They're like, why can't you go, just do a regular job and da-da-da-da. And we're drinking a little bit and it turned into like a 3-verse-1 conversation. And I was holding my own because unlike them, I'd actually lived the life. So I have concrete experience in what I was doing. And I was trying to tell them, guys, listen, I'm telling you, if I was struggling, I would tell you and I'd ask you for help, but I'm okay. And I'd like you to respect that I'm okay, whereas you don't need to worry about it. And they're like, that's not fair. We're worried about you. And I told them, I was like, that sounds like a nice thing to say to someone, but really what you're saying is you need me to demonstrate to you, to plead my case and prove to you why what I'm doing is okay so that uncomfortable part of your psyche can be at rest. This isn't about me. This is about you and your discomfort. And you're asking me to be and I told them, you're not my how do you say it? Like, you're not my boardroom. You're not my board of controllers, right? Ultimately, I don't have to prove anything to you. I don't have to explain myself. And hopefully you could respect me enough as a person and as your friend, where if I tell you, guys, I'm not lying to you, I'm okay. If I need you for something, I'll let you know, but I'm okay. That you can be like, okay, hands off. This person doesn't need to be my responsibility because he's not. But at the same time, I also realized I could do a better job of communicating those kind of things and being patient with them, because I want to be the person I say I want to be, a more empathetic, reasonable, thoughtful person, right? Then I recognize that all this stuff is coming from an emotional place. These are people who are scared, they're worried, it's uncomfortable, and that can't be a nice feeling for them. So how can I have these conversations with my loved ones in a way where it's fair to them, but also very fair to me? Because let's not forget, I'm in the driver's seat. My job in life is not to make my decisions and then qualify them to everybody else for their comfort, right? So when I would have these conversations with family members, I started developing boundaries. So if somebody started going back into the, why this and what about this? Like I was back home in the US recently and my family started talking to me about why not getting married. And it was one of the first times where I was willing to engage, because in the past I would just start saying, guys, this is not a conversation. I'm telling you what I'm doing in my life so you can be in the loop, but I'm not asking for any input. Because one thing I don't want is to take advice from scared people. There is no wisdom in that. If I had someone who's been there, done what I wanted to do, then I'm a student. I'm all ears. I'm very willing to have the humility to shut up and listen. But that's because I can trust in their expertise. But to have some old auntie who is just speaking from her experience from 50 years ago in a different culture, in a different generation, I don't want to do her the disservice of humoring her, because that's an insult to her. I also don't want to play the conversation with her. I don't want to play her game. That's an insult to me. I also don't want to be on the attack and rip her point to shreds, aggressively. That's an insult to her in our relationship. So what the conversation ultimately ended up being was, I kept my cool, I was patient, and I tried to demonstrate to them, be like, guys, I understand why you're saying what you're saying. And the things that you say I should be going for are things that I want ultimately. However, in this day and age, I don't believe that it's in my best interest or it's not the priority for these reasons. And I was okay with leaving them not being convinced. So I think that was the important thing, was learning to establish a boundary that, hey, this is not interrogating me time. I can say no to this conversation. If you're not look, if you want to have a conversation about something that pertains to me and my life that has nothing to do with you, then we're not going to have it on your terms. We're going to have it on mine. If you're willing to hear me, to actually listen to what I have to say, right? Then I'm very happy to include you into my thought process. And I'm also open to advice if it's coming from a place of thoughtfulness. But if the conversation is going to be about, for whatever reason, you think you know better, especially if it's about an aspect of life that you've not even dipped your toes in. No, it's a waste of my time. And the thing about advice is it's free to give. It's expensive to take. It costs me everything to listen to a scared family member or friend giving me advice about how I should behave, how I should conduct my life. It costs them nothing. And the crazy thing is, once you quote unquote make it, you're a success in a way that tracks with what they see success as, then they get to switch. Then they get to be like, oh, good for you, or I always knew it. And you're like, whoa, what happened to all that fear? What happened to all that lecturing? So the disrespect, the unintentional disrespect of feeling like I'm being lectured by people who don't know what they're talking about, right? That is the thing that I stopped buying into. I stopped allowing myself to participate in somebody who's speaking to me from up here, trying to dictate or trying to impose what I'm supposed to do, whereas my experience in this particular area, I've got a lot more wisdom in. And not because I'm a genius, but because I've actually done the work. I've actually physically, mentally, and everything put myself in a position to deal with it on a day-to-day basis so I can understand it better. So like this, walking the path less walked, or however it's phrased. I'm actually doing that. So I think that means I have enough self-respect to know who to have that conversation with. Now, I don't mind entertaining somebody, but the second I start to notice that somebody's overstepping their bounds, that's when I'm very quick to firmly, politely, but firmly be like, whoa, 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 you're out of your depth here. You're not the person to give me this advice. So I've had to be territorial, protective of my choices, and not just giving people access into what can influence me just because they want to or they think they should. You know, like I said, like I don't have to qualify anything I've done to someone who I don't think can relate to what I'm doing. You know, so there's a balance. You want to respect your family. You want to give them some space because it is coming from a good place. If it was malicious, then I'll just say, fuck you guys. But it's not. So you want to let them save some face. You want to reassure them a little bit, but to an extent where now it's coming at the cost of my own self-respect, of
Yeah.
my own agency. So I think it's finding that line. And it might be different from other people. That might mean shouting at your mom. That might be simply saying, hey guys, I don't want to have this conversation, very gently. But you got to be willing to be uncomfortable enough to find what that balance is, I think.
Yeah, it's such an important life skill in general, and it's one that you definitely need to develop at the beginning, especially in the stages where you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, because it's so tough, especially at that time, because you're used to like your parents, your uncles, your family. They were always like superheroes to you, like they could do everything, and then suddenly you grow up and you start
Mm-hmm.
seeing, okay, no, they're normal people, and your friends too, they're very important to you, and so they can have, I mean, especially adults that are older than you, have such an advantage, and that can be very beneficial because they can point to things that you don't know. That can be very valuable. It can be, they have so much
Yeah.
experience that they can really help you, but it can also be used in a way to manipulate you. So hey, I want, it can be with good, like I think for him the best for him is to push him in that direction, but it can also, but that's not necessarily what is actually best for you, and so you need to learn how to deal with adult feedback, with feedback from your family, with your friends. That's something that I also had to learn for myself, and it was very interesting. Like the way I noticed when it was good feedback versus bad feedback is, like, if I'm making the case and I'm using logic, arguments, and I'm trying to explain to the best of my knowledge, but their position doesn't move, as if like no matter what I say, no matter what argument I bring, they won't move in their position, then basically it's not a discussion. It's not about finding out what's best for me. It's just about pushing their agenda no matter what. And that's when I realized, okay, that's not good advice. I want to also hear a little bit how, when you decided to go into writing, how did you go about it? How did you approach writing? How did you approach improving your skills?
Yeah, I like that question because I didn't have the sense of I need to be a writer, therefore this is the only thing in life that's worth doing. That's what I had with music. I was that person with rapper because after the point of I like rapping, it turned into if I'm not a rapper, who am I? Right? So then you cling to it. With the writing, I was much more open because I already let the other big creative thing in my life go, the music. So I went into my grad program with an open mind about writing. I said, let me give it a real honest try. If it's not quite what I want, then I don't have to do that. I can leave my life open-ended. People think that means you're just drifting, but it doesn't. It means that you're a little bit more just open to what the fates bring you and what you naturally gravitate towards. So the writing was kind of like a temporary thing at first. Let me try it. But fortunately, along the road, I started enjoying it. I mean, I always loved language anyway, in the English language. So working on it was rewarding. The ritual of sitting down and at a cafe and getting work done, it was really nice. When I was in Taiwan, I started surfing in the south, and when I was done surfing, I would just find a corner to myself I'd have like a nice strong drink and write, and it was the best time. Even if it's a Saturday night and everybody's partying, that's what I would rather be doing. So over time, it just developed into a love of the craft rather than needing to make it. And of course, I would love to be able to fully support myself through it and get recognition and all that. But I did have a dream that really kind of put it very clearly what my intentions were. The dream was I was on a big ship, right? And I just had a bunch of different people from my life, all positive relationships. So it's like people I've been friends with for a day, family members for my whole life, and they're all hanging out, playing football, playing card games, enjoying. And then water starts to leak. And so everyone's in panic because apparently the ship had a dome over it, so there's no escape. It's locked in. So everyone's panicking, running around me. I was just like, all right, I guess it's flooding. So I start walking up to the next level, till I'm on the top deck. Water starts puddling up, and I'm like, we're all going to die. This sucks. I wish I could have put the book out in the world so that people could see it. And then I had a second thought right after that, which was, wait, that doesn't matter. The important thing is I wrote this thing. I did it. And that's what's more important. And as soon as I had that thought, a helicopter in the dream picked up the ship, put it on shore, and everyone was safe. And so that was great because it let me know that even subconsciously, I'm doing it for the right reason. That I'm doing it for the sake of the craft rather than what will it get me. You know what I mean? So that's something that lets you know that I was in it for the right reason. And so to support myself while I continued giving time to writing every day and creating space for it, it forced me to live a little bit creatively, meaning not living in New York because New York's really expensive. Part-time work is not great there. So traveling to these different countries, Hoi An, for example, I'm in this city now, giving it a shot. I'm in a co-working space. But spending time on the important things in my life and making space so that I can develop the skill set in this thing that I actually chose, which is writing. Because I want to be a true professional about it. I don't want to be a kid with a dream and you're like, yeah, I'm just supposed to be a writer. No. I want to be an adult about it. There's going to be sacrifices. There's going to be trade-offs. If this is something that I want to do, then I've got to give myself the best shot. And now I don't have the ego that I did with rap, where if it didn't look like how I had imagined in my head, I didn't want it. No, with writing, maybe it takes on a different form. Maybe I get it published in a non-traditional means. Whatever the case is, I can still be a student of writing and be like, okay, this is good, but tell me what is shitty about it so I can get better. I always want to improve. I want to be a better writer. So I think that's kind of kept the appetite going, where I found a craft or a skill or something that I do where I enjoy it just for the sake of it. And that gives me the motivation to continue getting better at it with the trust that every time I write a book or whatever, right, even if it doesn't get picked up, you're learning from it, next level, and eventually you get to a door. I think we spoke on a conversation earlier and I said, every book that I write, you learn something from it and you take with it to the next book. So it's like if you completed a video game with level 99, maxed out HP or whatever, right? And then you restart the game with those weapons, with those stats. Now you're at a huge advantage and you can play the game even better this time. So it's a process. It takes patience. It takes time. Again, it takes failure, but you're ultimately growing each time. And I think allowing yourself to tap into that innocent part, like I did with the music, touching on that, and then adding the structure of an adult is what really allows you to grow that. And for that, the external world to start to take notice so that it can be a viable source of a career or income.
Yeah, that's great, because like one of the traps of the advice, follow your passion, is that you think passion is this solution that will solve all your problems, and if you only find passion, then you will have unlimited motivation, unlimited discipline, unlimited energy. But that's not the case. Like even if you find something that you're passionate about, that's where it begins. then you need to take it seriously. You need to work strategically. It will still be painful because you need to improve your skills. That feedback is really uncomfortable. And really, you need to push yourself, and you have to have also this discipline to be able to do it consistently. And passion only takes you so far. It doesn't really give you all this unlimited motivation that you hope for. So you need to have this strategy and discipline, and learn to take it seriously. And it's better to learn those skills from the beginning. Like, even if you're not passionate about it, you can learn the skill of taking things seriously, of improving, of knowing how to do that, and how to be
Of being a hard
disciplined
worker.
and strategic. Yeah, being a hard worker,
Yeah.
being strategic about
Being
it.
a hard
And that's
worker
when,
for the sake of it. Not for one particular project, but just because you can pride yourself on being a hard worker in all your endeavors.
exactly. And that's also a skill that takes time to develop. And so if you wait until you find your passion to develop that skill, then you will have a hard time converting that passion into actual work. So it's much better to develop that since the beginning. And counterintuitively, it also makes you enjoy things that you're not passionate about more. If you work hard and you take it serious, you improve, you learn so much more. And you start to enjoy those things, even if that's not your passion, even if that's not something that you will do forever. In my experience, you enjoy those things more whenever you take them seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of like hit the ground running. And then as soon as you start working on the passion stuff, you already have a nice base of productivity and professionalism so that you can run with that fire you get with the passion. And even on the days when the fire is a little bit quieter, you still have the discipline to keep consistent and keep going.
Exactly. So Adnan, it has been a great interview. I want to ask you the last question.
Yeah, thank you.
And this is for anybody who is maybe thinking about going to writing, but they're not sure. So as a writer, what are the reasons to go into writing? What are the rewards of it? But also, what are the challenges? What are the things you would tell someone who's planning to go into writing? What would you tell them?
So I'll start with the challenges. As romantic as it sounds to be like I'm a writer, I'm an artist, whatever it is, I think my advice is, and I think it's advice I would give to whatever kids I have in the future if they want to pursue this kind of work. It's, if you want to pursue that, right, there's a very subjective field where there's no set path. It's not like there's a corporate ladder you can just easily climb by being there and get promoted. You have to ask yourself, what do you like? Do you like nice things? Do you like a comfortable life? Do you like things mapped out for you, right? Your path ahead, they're already laid for you. If you do, there's no dishonor in that. That's great, right? In fact, it might make your life more simple, and it might give you a more contented life quicker. So if I had somebody who wanted to pursue the thing of writing, I'd be like, okay, well, one, do you actually like writing? Is it a means to an end for you, or do you just naturally enjoy words and language and storytelling, that sort of thing? Okay, that's a good start. But if you're not willing to stomach living simply, living in a way that you don't want to live, being stripped of some of your comforts, right? Having to actually face being out of your comfort zone, if those are things that sound unappealing to you, that you don't want to do, okay, no judgment. But you know that about yourself. If the priority is about having a nice, comfortable life, then maybe you shouldn't do writing. But if you're willing to do the writing thing, to work hard, to push, to have challenges that are not glamorous, if you're willing to do boring, hard work on a consistent basis, if you're willing to be rejected, and if you can handle being uncomfortable for long periods of time, if that's something you think you can stomach, if you can handle it, and that's not to say that will always be the reality, but if you think it's going to be this fairy tale of I'm a writer, I mean, think about how many people go to Hollywood to be an actor and they think, oh, 6 months I'm going to be it, and then they're for the rest of their lives working at some pub as like a karaoke singer, right? If you're not willing to face the very unglamorous, unflattering reality of writing, and comfort matters more to you, then pick the comfort. There's no dishonor. You can still have a meaningful life. You can still do things that you care about. And you can also be happier because you're honest about what you want out of your life. But if you're somebody where you're like, look, I don't need as much from my life. I'm okay with getting my hands dirty. I'm willing to be bold. I just love writing. It's connected to me. Then I would say, then you can give that a shot. And good things will come of that. Meaning, yeah, it can be uncomfortable, but then you can get used to being comfortable, used to being uncertain. You can learn how to thrive in those conditions. You can learn to operate, perform even in a deficit, which is a great superpower. You can improve your skills. You can communicate with others. You can really tap into the depths of who you are in life and express it through your writing. You can touch people. You can also find a beautiful world for you to return to, right? One that you've created that can give you joy and happiness, creating characters that are, the summation of people you've met in your life. So there's a lot of deeply rewarding things with the writing as well. I would say if communication matters to you, right? There's a belief or an idea that you really want to get out there and writing is the way to do it. That's definitely a reward. You're putting it in your words, taking something that's important to you and sharing it. So there's this, and none of this stuff has to do with the monetary results. Because let's treat the monetary stuff as a icing on the cake. Because then, okay, benefit, you're a superstar. You get bestseller. You get to live life writing, traveling the world, eating fancy foods and meeting interesting people. That's great. But let's be adults about this. Are you willing to have a life that's not necessarily, it's not dragging you through the mud? I have plenty, look at where I'm at. I have very little to complain about right now. That being said, some of the comforts, whether it's, the security of a relationship or a companion, financial, full financial security, all these things that allow people to be like, oh, I'm okay. That's something you're going to have to deal with. Maybe not in every case, but that's something that's worth expecting that you'll have to deal with. So if you're somebody who's willing to bet on themselves, no matter what, and also being like, it's too much for me. I guess I don't want to do that. So you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to fail, right? So my advice to someone who's writing, who really wants to pick it up, it's something I think it's good advice and something that I try to return to myself. It's two things. One is to work harder than you want to work. That's important. Now that can be to whatever degree. It doesn't mean you run yourself into the ground and burn out. What it means though is that whatever that nagging voice that says, I don't want to do that, I don't do that, work harder than that. Get that extra, put in the, how they say, go that extra mile. You can always be proud of yourself if you do that. You don't have regrets when you do that. And you know that you're giving sufficient time and energy to your work by working harder than you want to. But then the second thing is to be kinder, practice being kinder to yourself than you think you should be. And think you should is important because we'll give good advice and, big everybody else up, support everybody else, say you're amazing to everybody else. But for whatever reason, we're our worst critic, right? And we think we don't deserve the good stuff. Or if we do, only a little bit. Let's not get too greedy. So if we can be kinder to ourselves, kinder to yourself than you think you should be, meaning, I had a hard day. Okay, do you want to work today? I should, but I really don't want to. Okay, so take the whole damn day off. And don't feel guilty about it. You did good today, or you're feeling sad, or, you want a piece of cheesecake? Eat the cheesecake. You deserve it. You deserve it just because. You're allowed to do these nice things for yourself without reason. Now, you can reward yourself But what I mean is being kinder to yourself. Like, hey, pat yourself on the back. You had a hell of a month. Today was a shit day. Or this last week you've been underperforming. But that's okay. There's ebbs and flows. You're doing great. Keep going. Maybe if you need to do a little bit more tomorrow, you can do that. But I think those two things in balance can make for a very potent combination, because now you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing that internal locus of control, the things you have say over, you're really maximizing those things. And you're pushing hard and you're priding yourself on your ability to keep going. But at the same time, you're not being a tyrant. You're not being a slave driver to yourself through that. You're also like, all right, hey, it's time to hit the brakes a little bit. Today we got to slow down. Today you want to, look, it's a Tuesday. You're supposed to get up and do stuff at 9 a.m. You know what? Today we're just going to sleep until whenever I wake up. Oh, I woke up at 3 in the afternoon. Okay, good. Without beating yourself up about it. So I think if you can find that balance, and that is something that could really set you up long term to do something like writing, because you can stay attached to your writing, you can keep working it, regardless of if it's good one day or if it's shit the next day. You have your discipline, but then you also remind yourself, look, I'm doing something very brave. I'm doing something that the average person isn't doing. I'm taking a chance. I'm taking a risk, and that deserves to be recognized first and foremost by me. I can pat myself on the back, and I did what I was supposed to do today. So today I'm just going to watch Netflix or whatever the case is. So I think that would be the advice that I would give to somebody who wants to write. Stay on top of your work and really push yourself, and also be really nice to yourself. It's possible. Why shouldn't it be possible? Right? So then why not do that? Why not have a win-win for both your joy and your drive?
That's a great answer. Thanks, Aatman.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been a blast. Thank you, man.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Aatman. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, because more stories like these are to follow.